They told you wealth is about luck, about hard work, about saving money, about waiting your turn. That is the story they feed people who are meant to stay exactly where they are. But if you study power, if you study men like Machiavelli, the architects of influence, control, and long-term advantage, you begin to see something uncomfortable. Wealth is not just money. Wealth is a mindset structure, a way of thinking that separates those who participate in life from those who control the game. And once you adopt it, you don't just earn more. You start to move differently. You start to see differently. You start to win before others even realize there is a competition. So listen closely, because what you're about to hear is not motivation. It is mental reprogramming. And if you truly understand these 7 mindset shifts, you will never look at money, people, or opportunity the same way again. Watch this to the end, because each shift builds on the last, and the final ones are where everything flips. Shift 1. You stop thinking like a worker and start thinking like an owner. Most people wake up thinking, what do I need to do today? That is worker mentality. The worker trades time for money. The worker waits to be told what matters. The worker follows systems designed by someone else. But the wealthy mind does something dangerous, something uncomfortable. It asks, what system can I control? Machiavellian thinking begins here, not in effort, but in position. Because effort without control is slavery in disguise. If you are only focused on doing tasks, you will always be replaceable. But when you think like an owner, even if you have no business, no assets, no capital, you begin to notice leverage. You begin to notice inefficiencies. You begin to ask, who is benefiting from my labor? And how do I become that person? And that question alone separates lifetimes. Because workers compete, owners collect, workers survive, owners structure survival for others. And most people will never make this shift, because it requires accepting a hard truth. No one is coming to promote you into power. You have to think your way into it first. Shift 2. You stop chasing money and start chasing leverage. This is where most people fail. They think wealth is linear. More hours equals more money. More effort equals more success. But that is the illusion that keeps them trapped. Leverage is when one action produces multiplied outcomes. Machiavelli understood this deeply. Control the mechanism, not the effort. There are 3 types of leverage: people leverage, capital leverage, and system leverage. If you only rely on your own effort, you are capped by time, energy, and emotion. But when you learn leverage, you realize something almost unfair. The same hour can be worth $10 or $10,000, depending on structure. The poor ask, how do I work harder? The wealthy ask, how do I make one decision affect 1,000 outcomes? And here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people avoid leverage because it requires responsibility, it requires thinking ahead, it requires risk, and most importantly, it requires understanding that comfort is the enemy of scale. Because comfort keeps you small enough to be controlled. But leverage makes you dangerous enough to be free. And once you see leverage, you stop respecting effort alone. You start respecting impact, and that changes everything. Shift 3. You stop seeking approval and start studying influence. There is a silent addiction most people never notice, the addiction to being liked. They shape their opinions to fit the room. They soften their ambition so others don't feel uncomfortable. They dilute their goals so they don't intimidate anyone. And in doing so, they slowly erase their power. Machiavelli would call this strategic self-destruction, because in real power dynamics, approval is expensive. Every time you seek validation, you give away control over your identity. Wealthy thinking flips this. It asks, who benefits from me being liked, and who benefits from me being effective? Influence is not about being liked. It is about being understood, respected, and followed when it matters. There are people who are loved by everyone and controlled by everyone. And there are people who are misunderstood by many, but obeyed by reality itself. The shift is this. Stop asking, do they approve of me? Start asking, am I positioning myself in a way that cannot be ignored? Because approval fades, but influence compounds. And when you stop performing for validation, you start building authority. Shift 4. You stop thinking short-term and start playing strategic time games. Most people are emotionally trapped in the present. They want quick results, fast money, immediate recognition. But Machiavellian minds think in timelines, not moments. They understand that power is not built in days, it is built in sequences. One move today protects a position tomorrow. One sacrifice now unlocks expansion later. One uncomfortable decision prevents collapse in the future. And this is where wealth begins to separate from survival. Because survival thinking asks, what can I get now? Strategic thinking asks, what position will this create in 2 years? And here is what most people never realize. Time is not just passing. Time is accumulating advantage for those who know how to use it. While others are reacting, you are positioning. While others are consuming, you are building. While others are distracted, you are compounding. And compounding is not just financial, it is psychological, it is relational, it is reputational. Everything you do either stacks in your favor or silently works against you. And most people never notice until it is too late, because they were busy chasing moments instead of building momentum. And now we reach the point where things begin to shift even deeper. Because once you understand leverage, influence, and time, you start to realize something unsettling. The world does not reward effort equally. It rewards perception, it rewards positioning, and it rewards psychological advantage, which leads directly into the next shift. Shift 5 is where everything becomes more strategic, more calculated, and far less emotional than most people are ready for. Because this is where you stop reacting to the world and start shaping how the world reacts to you. Shift 5. You stop reacting to life and start controlling your emotional signal. Most people don't realize how much money they lose because of emotion. They get angry, they make bad decisions, they get excited, they rush into deals, they feel fear, and they miss opportunities, they feel doubt, and they quit too early. So in reality, they are not poor because of lack of opportunity. They are poor because their emotions are untrained. Machiavelli understood something most people ignore. Whoever controls their emotional signal controls their outcomes. Because in the real world, people are constantly reading you. Not just what you say, but how you react. If you react too quickly, you signal desperation. If you panic under pressure, you signal weakness. If you get overly emotional in negotiation, you signal loss of control. And once people sense that, they adjust their behavior around you. They push harder. They offer less. They take more. So the shift is simple but not easy. You stop reacting instantly and start responding strategically. There is a gap between stimulus and response. Most people close that gap instantly. The wealthy expand it. They pause. They assess. They choose the reaction that benefits their long-term position, not their short-term feeling. And over time, this creates something powerful. You become unreadable. And in a world where everyone is emotionally exposed, being unreadable is an advantage, because people cannot manipulate what they cannot predict. Shift 6. You stop seeing money as payment and start seeing it as power storage. Most people think money is something you spend, but in strategic thinking, money is something you store power inside of. Every dollar you hold is stored influence, stored options, stored freedom, but every unnecessary expense is power released without return. And this is where people destroy their future without realizing it. They spend to feel better, they spend to impress others, they spend to escape discomfort. But Machiavellian thinking asks a colder question. What is this money doing for my future position? If the answer is nothing, then it is not spending. It is leakage. Because wealth is not about what you earn. It is about what you retain and redirect. The wealthy don't just accumulate money. They accumulate control over decisions. Because money buys time, money buys silence, money buys negotiation power, money buys the ability to say no without consequence. And when you understand that, you stop chasing money emotionally. You start managing it strategically. Every financial decision becomes a positioning move, not a reaction, a move. And slowly, you stop living like someone trying to survive the month, and start operating like someone building a future that cannot be interrupted. Shift 7. You stop thinking you are in a fair system, and start thinking in terms of positional advantage. This is the final shift, and it is the one most people resist the most, because it removes the illusion that everything is fair, equal, and based purely on effort. It is not. The world is structured around positioning. Who you know, what you control, where you stand, what people associate you with, what problems you solve, what perception follows your name. Two people can work equally hard, and one will rise while the other disappears. Not because of talent, but because of positioning. Machiavelli would say, in every system there are centers of gravity, and the goal is not to work harder in the system. It is to position yourself closer to where value is decided. When you understand this, you stop asking, why am I not rewarded yet? And you start asking, where is the real decision-making power in this system, and how do I move closer to it? Because proximity is power. Visibility is power. Control of attention is power. And most people are far away from all three. They are working hard, in places that don't matter, hoping to be noticed by systems that are not watching. But the strategic mind moves differently. It does not beg for recognition. It positions for inevitability. And when you reach that level of thinking, something changes inside you permanently. You stop feeling behind. You stop feeling rushed. You stop feeling like you are competing with everyone, because you realize something most people never do. You are not competing in the same game they are. You are building position while they are chasing validation. And in the long run, position always defeats effort alone, always. Because once you see life through this lens, there is no going back. Not because the world changes, but because you do. And when your thinking changes, your outcomes must follow. And that is where real wealth begins, not in money, but in perception, control, and silent advantage over time.